Guenther Steiner is out at Haas F1. I did not expect to start the show with those words. And since the news came out on Wednesday, there's been actually quite a bit of information that has come out, a good bit from Guenther himself, and we are going to get into all of that. This is Jon Massengale, and welcome to your Sunday night with Speed City. And I'm joined by Jonathan Green, Bob Varsha, and former Haas F1 team manager, Dave ONeal. Jonathan, I want to start with you because I want you to try to get us somewhat succinctly up to speed on exactly what happened with Guenther Steiner.
Well, the season finished. They were last. As you know, he remains probably the most popular team manager. And just because of Drive to Survive in America alone, team managers and their notoriety have become famous, especially Guenther. But I don't think anybody expected this. And Gene Haas basically pulled the plug between Christmas and New Year with a phone call. And typical American style, not allowing his team principal, the man whose idea and inception it was to create Haas, didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to the people that made it happen. And whether you like it or not, it was a pretty inauspicious way for a man who's done a great deal of work for a Formula One team to be let go the way he was. And those are the facts. Like it or lump it. I've got a lot of opinions, which we'll share, I'm sure, with the rest of you guys, but that's the facts.
Bob Varsha, I want to go to you next, and we're going to get into you, Dave ONeal, quite a bit with your experience with the Haas team. But, Bob, you've seen a bunch of these come and go. Did this surprise you?
Yeah, it did, actually. Now, having said that, years ago, I thought moving Guenther on would be a good thing for the team, because they were stuck in that long decline that resulted in them being 10th and stone last in the Constructors' Championship for 3 straight years. But yeah, this one kind of hurts. For all the reasons Jonathan mentioned, I think it was not handled in a very classy way by Gene Haas. But as Guenther has said, to his credit, time and again, it's Gene's team. He can do whatever he wants with it. Now, whether we'll know the full facts or not, maybe when Dave answers your questions, we will. But there's a lot of stories going around, one of which I saw Helmut Marko from Red Bull quoted as saying that he heard that Guenther had approached Gene Haas about getting shares in the team. He wanted an equity position in the team, which Gene declined, which is maybe a little bit out of character because all of Gene's other racing operations are with co-owners, as it were. So that seemed not entirely implausible. And there was also talk about the direction that Guenther wanted to take the team. Gene didn't agree. I tend to come down on Guenther's side on that because Gene is not exactly a hands-on owner. We've talked before, and I've been barking on a lot about how successful team principals, Toto Wolff, Christian Horner, Zach Brown, are not engineers. They're not designers. They're not mechanics. To some extent, they're race drivers, including Horner and, of course, Zach Brown. But they refuse to get involved on the technical side. And in an interview, Gene Haas said, well, we've got a great engine. We've got a great car. It must be aerodynamics. And maybe Guenther disagreed with that. Maybe in the fullness of time, we'll know. I've listened to a couple of interviews with Guenther since. He has really not let much out of the bag in terms of information. You know, he says he wants to keep it private. It's Gene's team. He can do what he wants. But, it kind of strikes me as being a little bit like another team manager firing we saw earlier this year, Otmar Szafnauer, because he said the bosses at Renault kept meddling, we should be on this schedule, we should be doing this by this time. And Otmar kept saying, it takes time. There is a plan in place. It's going to get there, but it ain't going to get there this year. And, next thing you know, he's on the street. So hopefully we'll know. I feel for Guenther, but he seems very upbeat. I imagine he'll be in some demand. I mean, a guy with his level of popularity, in fact, maybe that was his undoing. As I wrote to you guys a week or so ago, it kind of reminded me of when Tiger, help me,
Tiger
Woods. I hate golf. When Tiger Woods fired his original caddy, Fluff, who was gaining an outsized personality, an outsized popularity. Tiger fired him because, the employee is not supposed to be more famous than the employer. So there may be a little bit of this in there as well. But sorry for the long answer. I'm just running through all the different reasons that I can think of.
Well, I want to go to you, Dave. Look, I know you were there from day one with Guenther. And let's not forget, I mean, this was what the Haas F1 team was basically, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but this was Guenther's idea and Guenther's concept to use the Ferrari, as much of a Ferrari, car as he could. And then he went to Gene with the idea. Is that right? Oh, you're muted, Dave.
Yeah, pretty much. I think he did doorstep another OEM before he got to Ferrari, which he got refused by, which I believe, could be wrong, but I believe it was Mercedes. But he came up with this idea. He ran the Red Bull truck in the States, and that didn't have great success, so they shut that down. And he started his carbon fiberworks company up, which is pretty successful, makes carbon seats for NASCARs and a load of other components that go on the NASCAR and other race cars in the States and around the world as well, for some Formula One teams as well. But his idea was, he found a hole in the rules, which was that you could basically spend a year developing the car before you put your entry in, because you could get an entry then. He went to the teams and said, look, I've got a great idea. We can use the model, and we can develop it. And also, not only that, we'd like to buy your engine, your battery, your gearbox, your steering wheel, your fuel cell, your suspension, your uprights, even your wheels. So the only thing that was left to do was the aero surfaces. So it was a fantastic idea. And obviously you go to one of the top teams who would want to sell it and also maybe spend time together, shall we say, developing the aero surface or aero surfaces. So you had two lots of development going on. Anyway, winding back a little bit, the story he told me was that he basically got the phone number of every billionaire he could find in the States, rang them all up, kissed all the frogs, as you say, and got on a plane, spent a huge amount of his own money. So it wasn't someone was kind of feeding him the dream, the money, etc. It was his idea. He jumped on the plane, doorstepped these people, asked them for 50 million or whatever it was when you needed 500 million to start it, just to get them in the door. And it seemed like Gene was the one who he thought was a great idea. And then the Haas F1 team was born, went from there, and then moving on to what I talked about earlier was he went around looking for the manufacturer that would support the effort, which he did. Now, the biggest thing that when you start a Formula One team up is not just the engines you need, it's all the off-car equipment. So you have all the infrastructure that supports the car, the team, back at the factory, all the areas that you need to run all the components on the car and have communication with, service them. So you don't just take them back and service them, you have to send them back to Ferrari. So all that had to be built up and thought of. But yeah, basically, John, that's kind of how it started.
Well, when did you get that call from Guenther to join the Haas team? And when you did what did you think? Was this just going to be another job, or could you potentially see some success?
Well, I kind of got a call after it was Manor at the time had closed the doors, and then kind of started up a couple of months later. But December of 2014, I was in New York for Christmas, and I got a phone call from Guenther, and he said, I'd like to talk to you about helping set up this Formula One team I've got an entry for. And at that stage, I was like, oh, here we go. It's another one of the Marsha, Caterham, HRT, US F1 outfits with, promised money, shall we say, that never ended up. So I kind of...
Big dreams.
In his dreams, yeah. So I kind of said, well, is it going to be like the others? And he, we're on the radio now, but he said, whatever you do, don't effing mention those teams to me. He said, it's going to be nothing like them. We're going to have money. It's going to be organised. I don't want to hear those words again. So, a couple of months later, after Christmas, we flew back. I signed my contract on Christmas Eve, which was quite a nice present. Got back, and he said, what do you think of the Marsha factory? And I'm like, well, it's okay. Needs a bit of work doing to it. Didn't have any money spent on it for a while. He goes, I was thinking of buying that and, putting the race team there. So I said, well, yeah, if you're just using it as a race team, it will be fine because, it doesn't have the space that your Ferraris, like the Jess, which is what Ferrari's building's called. It's called Jess. It's probably 100,000 square foot. This thing was 15,000 square foot. So we kind of, that's when the journey started, if you like, was January the 6th. I think when I came back, there was 3 people in this damn cold factory. We had to find the heating switch and get it going. And then, the kind of, like I say, the journey started from there, which was pretty cool.
All right, well, looking at the clock here, let's go to our first break. And when we come back, we'll hear more from Dave ONeal and Bob Varsha and Jonathan Green. Back after these messages. All right, we're live on YouTube. Let's see what the boys are saying. I knew Drew was going to be first in because he said 3 years too late. Yeah, he's been banging that drum. Drew, in fact, you sparked me to mention this possibility. I didn't really think it was going to happen, but I thought it was a possibility. But yeah, Kevin Kelly says it's freezing. It's freezing here too in Texas. It's like 20-something degrees here. Drew says, I see interesting parallels between Gene's F1 and NASCAR teams, both struggling to be competitive. Haas needs more money. Yep. Kevin Kelly
That's
says,
my point. Yep.
Yep. Andy
There's
P.
the first radio headset cup.
Oh, that's cool.
No!
What am I offered?
You need the other one, Bob.
I bet you can hear the ocean.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Yeah, when you put it to your ear, it goes, we're all looking like wankers, Gene.
Oh,
Yeah.
that line. Oh, we'll come back.
Yeah, there's another point to be made here about the future of the team. And
yeah, is it quite a nice position to be in now, that second race of the season, and you're thinking, ninth isn't quite the maximum this car could have got. We could have had more points.
No, it's always disappointing. You always want maximum, but then if you think about it, you cannot be too greedy. Last year for 2 points, I would have fucked the whole paddock. So it's a good place to be in.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm sure America doesn't mind, but I'll apologise for the language that was in that previous answer. Great stuff. Good to thank you very much, and well done today.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, you've achieved it all. Guenther said the F word on our show. I think we can just go ahead and shut the whole thing down now.
He's frowning at me that he didn't say the F word, but I definitely heard him say the F word. What?
I don't know. I thought he said
what
back of the
did
grid.
you say you would do to the whole paddock?
Hug them.
Fantastic.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
I had to play that. That was
yeah,
That's gold.
that's gold.
we've
Yeah,
made history.
yeah, and the other half of
And we
that
never heard from the
conversation-
FCC.
Yeah, the other
Uh-huh.
half of that conversation was played out on Netflix, of course, and that's been shared quite a bit this week on social media.
Sure.
Where the it was pretty cool to see the other half of that conversation, to see when Guenther walked away and said,
Yeah.
he looked to his PR
I
guy,
said, what did I say?
Stewart, and he goes, what did I say? Did I say? And Stewart,
What
just
language did I use?
Stewart, knowing him so well, says, did you drop an F-bomb? And Guenther's like, no. So we thought you did, but anyway.
Well,
that was
hands across
amazing.
the water.
Yeah. Well, coming back into this, Jonathan, you had some theories, you said.
Yeah. I mean, there's two things I want to talk about on this show, and that's the theories of why, and then the future and the decision and the ramifications of that decision for Gene. And I want to include Dave in that conversation, obviously. But one of my theories is it goes back to what you were just saying, or what Bob was just saying about the Tiger Woods scenario, which is, you know, you've got a guy who is without doubt one of the most popular figures in Formula One and remains to this day, even without a job that way. He's had more TV time than any other team manager, bar Christian Horner, who wins all the races, and Toto Wolff, who last decade won all the races. So that's pretty impressive. And if you're Gene Haas and pretty much an introvert, I mean, I've chased him around for 4 years and had one interview with him. He and like you say, he's not present at many races. You've got to think to yourself when you get up in the morning as Gene Haas and see your company, your multi-million-dollar success story, although it's had its ups and downs, Haas Automation, and then seeing yourself as the worst team in a racing team with your name on the side, and then Guenther getting offers from CBS to do a mini series, putting out a book, putting out an audio place, and lines that you've just heard. It's got to wrangle a little, especially. And he used the words embarrassing in the statement of getting rid of Guenther. And there's got to be a touch of that whereby it just doesn't fly for an American successful owner, whether it be a football team or a racing team, to have that parallel going on.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Jonathan. It's, Gene Haas, even after the last 10 years, would hopefully be honest with himself and say, I don't know all about Formula One. I run a huge business worldwide. I've got other racing teams, other genres, NASCAR, what have you. But, going back to my point earlier about how the really successful team owners do not get involved in the design and engineering of or running of their race cars. I hope this is not Gene Haas getting out there. He says it's got to be aerodynamics. Well, you're paying an awful lot of smart people to work very hard on this problem and to point a finger at one area and say, that's it, fix that, and we'll do better is a little over the top. And it's worth noting that that Io, who we all had a chat with in Austin this year, will take over as team principal. And he's lost his technical director as well, because Simone Resta has left the team. So here he is looking forward. The car's got to be ready to go. They're testing in a couple of weeks. But, it's a whole new world for this team. And where do you go when two big chunks of the chain of command have been changed? Not removed, but changed. New people would be appointed, very smart people. But I mean, we all know if Formula One was a pure spending contest, the richest team would win all the time. I don't think Red Bull is the richest team. I don't think they have the biggest investment, but they obviously have the formula down. It's an engineering contest, and you've got to have the right people in the right places and go forward on that basis. So I think before he starts pointing fingers, Gene Haas needs to take a real close look at his roster with somebody who knows those people, and nobody knows them better than Guenther, and decide where the issue is and how they get it fixed. But that'll be Io's job going forward.
John, I got a question for Dave ONeal, because I think he can lend some thought to this. That's exactly what Bob's just been saying is exactly my question, which is, okay, you've had enough of after 10 years of Guenther Steiner, but you're not willing to invest more, as all the other teams are doing, in a time where most of these franchises now are worth over $1 billion. You're last in the championship, and you hand Io, a team without a technical director who left differently, but has not been replaced, and without Guenther Steiner, who, is a Formula One insider for many years. So what have you given Io? We were very privileged to meet him. I like the guy. He's got a lot of experience. He's Romain Grosjean's engineer for many years. He's a rock climber, but he's got a mountain to climb. Dave, what does the guy do? I mean, you know him, friend of yours. What's he going to do?
Nice metaphor.
I think, going back to what Bob said, losing 2 people, he's kind of lost 3 people because he's lost now AO's team principal. He's lost his chief engineer. So you've got to settle someone in that position as well. And then you move someone most likely from the team into that position. You've then probably lost a race engineer, so you've got to promote a race engineer. And it kind of goes on. There's probably, 4 or 5, 6 people dislodged through that movement. But, it goes, the whole thing goes on. The more and more I think about it while you 2 guys were speaking, it's, when you're on the pit wall and the rain starts to come, the tyres are wearing out quicker than you think. You get damage on the first lap. It's typically, the engineering decision is to look at the data and say, oh yeah, we're losing a bit of time. But also, when Guenther was on the wall, it wasn't just AO who'd make the decision and Guenther and me. It would be like we'd have a quick discussion. And maybe I saw a damaged wing end plate and they're wondering why the tyres are going off. And then, Guenther would say, what do you think? Or Guenther would say, AO, what's how much are we going to have knocked out of us over this 18-lap stint? And all of a sudden that relationship's disappeared because you have full trust in the 3 people you're talking to make that decision. And there's been some decent decisions. There hasn't been any huge howlers like they've had at Ferrari because of all the changing they've had there from the strategy or waiting for someone to give you an answer back at base in the engineers room there. It's literally on that pit wall that decisions were made. So I think that's one of the problems that will come and harbour itself with AO, who sits beside him and backs him up, tells him he's making a good decision, or, as Guenther used to say, that's a shit decision afterwards or before or whatever. It was dealt with there and then. And they have a plan. You hear all the ABC plans, and typically the ABC plans don't function much. It's normally an A.5 and a B and a quarter that you end up doing. So that's one thing, and then the other big bit for me is which Guenther was the master of. He was a deal maker. So when you're sitting at home and you think, and they mention Red Bull comes from Milton Keynes, they have 8 or 9 factories that they've morphed out of. Just rented the next factory beside that, then the next factory beside that, but they have kept their staff. And the reason they've kept their staff is because they've had the money to do so. They write good contracts. And of course, who wants to leave when you're winning and getting a 10 or 15 grand bonus at the end of the season, as opposed to nothing, when you're working at Haas. So the difference that AO is going to have to concentrate on now is that when we first started and it continued, Guenther did his trip, which was Kannapolis, North Carolina, Maranello, up to Dallara. So Maranello was where the engines and gearboxes came from, Ferrari. And then you'd move on to Dallara. And Dallara is a sports car manufacturer and a single-seater manufacturer that makes the IndyCar chassis and stuff. And that's where the Haas is designed. The design of the Haas takes place at Dallara and also the manufacturing of it. So in the winter now, the team is there putting the car together for the first test. So you have that component. So you've got Kannapolis, where HR and Gene kind of sits. You've got Maranello, where the engine, gearbox, and most of the components come from. You've got Dallara, where the car's designed and built. And then you have Banbury in the UK, where the team operates out of. And Guenther did that loop every 2 weeks, and he went to see everyone. There's no way that AO can jump into that role and also it's almost like I was thinking earlier. It's almost like when Bernie had F1 and Liberty Media took over. There was no deals written down. It's pretty much there is contracts because Guenther was good at contracts, but you're going to have to go and find the contracts. You're going to have to read them. You're going to have to see when they expire, what's involved, and then all of a sudden you've taken your eyes off the ball, which is the race, and putting the aero there, or getting a good driver in, or a program for the year. And of course, the other thing, which is this whole thing is bigger than Ben-Hur. When you start to peel it, it's like an onion, And the car was signed off in August. They started building it. They've done all the crash tests. They're putting it together in Italy now. That car is basically won't have any influence in it until the middle of 25. So he's going to be finishing 10th next year. Haas will finish 10th next year, unfortunately, unless something magical happens. So he's not only, maybe the most sensible thing to do would say, hey, Guenther, look, I've had a lot, enough of all this nonsense on the TV. We need to get back to engineering. How about you be the mouthpiece for it? And let's put another 3 or 4 super clever people under you. And we put them, you take all the pats on the back for it and all that, but let's get the clever people working the team and getting it wound up and move forward. And I think that's where it slipped, honestly. I think he was a great guy. He still is a great guy. He's a good friend of mine. And I just think there's, the engineering has slipped. Gene has made that clear. I don't think there's anything else. I know Gene. There's nothing else he cares about. He's got nothing else in life. He cares about his machines and he cares about his racing cars. He doesn't care about anything else. He just wants to win. He wants to be successful. And he's had 10 years of banging a load of cash into it and had a good year, the third year in, I think 2018, when they finished 5th in the championship. And that's what's got to be rebuilt. And you need some clever people, you need a structure, and you need a plan to move forward. Yeah. Hey, and they don't have it.
Dave,
yeah, I agree.
Dave, you said you talk about maybe keep Gene, if you're Gene Haas, keep Guenther and then bring some more people in. But I heard Guenther say a few things during some of these interviews where there was a twinge of animosity that he let out. He did a great job of saying, hey, it's his team. He can do whatever he wants. He can fire me. But he was upset with Gene, for one, about, saying it was embarrassing. He was upset about that. But do you think that the relationship was soured and that's probably the biggest driver? Obviously all these other things too. He maybe he didn't like the celebrity and all that. But do you think the relationship had soured?
I mean, Gene doesn't go out and have beers with anyone. He's solely business. He's I said earlier, as an introvert. So he just, he think when he came to the track, he'd just be in the garage all weekend watching the mechanics work, picking up things, feeling them. Why is this so light? Why did this break? After the race, if something had broke, there'd be he'd start investigating it and, for working out how it could be fixed, etc. So I think it was purely business. And, sometimes you have to make a change in life, don't you? It's the guy at the top, he is different. Guenther is different to how the other teams are structured. Look at what James Vowles has done. He's come from an engineering background. He was a strategist, super clever guy. And he came into Williams and said it was archaic. It was like going back 20 years when he joined it. And if you don't have the money, which I think it all comes back to, if the results were coming in, I would have thought the money was in the first place, so you'd be getting the results or at least scoring points. But I don't think they've had the proper money in from the start. I know they haven't, because the money was there, but it wasn't what the others were spending. And then, of course, when the budget cap came along, 2 years before it came along, the bigger teams were throwing hundreds of millions into how can we sort this out when the budget cap comes in. And they've all got, not all of them, but they have some of the top teams have businesses with, they have lawyers, strategists all involved in how they can skim this budget cap. And most of them are, they're well over. They've got companies that got no internet in the buildings. They're covering the whole thing up. They're spending millions more. And Haas, by the sounds of it, I mean, I don't know it for a fact, but by the sounds of it, they were 10 million short of getting to the budget cap, which is some super, super clever people, and also R&D equipment inside the factory that you can use. We can't test anymore now. That stopped. There's testing at the beginning of the year, but where they're finding the gains is testing the vehicles, built up vehicles in the factory, transient dynos, all the CFDs coming along super quickly, and there's loads of areas you can exploit. And if you don't have the money and you don't have the resource, you can't start even thinking about exploiting it, let alone exploiting it. And that's where they're at, I'm afraid. It's a bundle of cash.
Yeah, and you said they under the spending cap, and that didn't even count all the other things where you can spend money, like driver salaries and actually employee bonuses and the wages of the top three. There's tons and tons of money that Haas, Gene's argument was they're only $10 million away from the cost cap. Why can't he fix this? Well, what about the other $50 or $100 million that the other teams are spending? But Jonathan, I know you had a question. Sorry.
Well, no, it's more a comment. I mean, I'm no team manager and I'm no millionaire. Gene Haas is, so I defer to that brilliance. But I do have a question, which is, to use a boat analogy, you can't change tack and then and leave the team rudderless. That's my worry for this team. Mm-hmm. They finally got a good sponsor in MoneyGram, but if I were MoneyGram, I would be like, what now, guys? And you've just Dave has just brilliantly summed up IO's problem, which is he's not only got to keep the team going, and he's got a lot of respect within that team, and he's a great engineer, but where Guenther shone was his relationship with Ferrari and Vassar, his relationship with the FIA, his relationship with the media, his relationship with two very hard-nosed, brilliant drivers who've given up their careers that were successful and come back to Formula One and are hungry to finish their careers in Formula One on a high. That takes some doing. And my question for those that would be interested in now this new franchise of Formula One, which is worth a lot of money, is you need to be bringing Nick Saban in, But you know what I mean?
Or whomever.
It needs that kind of, okay, it's not Guenther, but it's going to be Otmar or it's going to be Binotto. I mean, Binotto would be an obvious choice given his Ferrari background. But what about all those, what Dave described, that 2-week circle? Who's going to do that?
You mentioned MoneyGram. MoneyGram. They said pretty much they were there because of Guenther. But so, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. Well, two things. Number one, the biggest fault of the Haas last year was the way it eats its tires. I mean, they'd be right there in qualifying, and then the race they'd fall off a cliff after a point. They've had really no experience with next year's Pirelli tires other than the postseason test at Abu Dhabi. So that just adds one more peak in the mountain, to use Jonathan's metaphor, that Io Komatsu and the team are going to have to climb. Let me ask Dave, do you think it was wise to hire from within and promote Io or somebody else into the team principal role? Or perhaps should they have looked outside, or will they yet to get some fresh thinking?
Yes, well, I think it's a good question. The answer to the question is, as soon as you start looking for someone with that form of intelligence and experience, like the two guys that have joined McLaren from Red Bull, it's a 2-year process because those guys are on a year's gardening leave. So what if you said, okay, let's keep AO doing what he's doing, and then let's bring someone else in with the experience that you're getting rid of, which is Guenther's. He's done Formula One for 20 years. He's hustled, bustled. He knows the business inside out. So who else is knocking around that has the motivation, the know-how, and the connections to jump into that position? So that's the first thing to try and tick off the list. And then let's say you picked two guys from Ferrari, one from Red Bull. They're all on a year's notice. So there you go. That's 24 gone. And not only that, I don't know if people realise, but as soon as you go on to gardening leave, you almost put in a cell. Not quite a cell, but you put in a room where you can surf the internet all day or design, pit stop equipment or wheel nuts or something like that.
Who would want to do that?
I feel like a man of experience there, Dave.
So you sit there for a year. You're not allowed to talk to anyone. You're not on any email chains or anything. So all the knowledge that you have of that vehicle is disappearing minute by minute, day by day, week by week, because you got 24 races. Even if you got 20 races when I was doing it, every race, even with Haas, there was at least 10 to 15 developments on the car each race. Not only because it was a long circuit or short circuit like Monaco or Monza with the straight, whatever, those are wing related and brake duct related components that are put on the car. There's other areas, software development, diff development within the software. There'll be a gearbox change, components in there, how the engine was run, suspension, camber, caster. All those things were changed. And not only, even if you knew they were changed, you wouldn't know why they were changed, because it could have been like they changed the rake on the car, they changed the wing levels, they moved the ballast from the front of the car to the back of the car in order to get the car to turn in or to oversteer. So all that data that you were growing with, all of a sudden you're lost. So you have to wait a year. And then after that, you've got to get going again, because a lot of the big teams, they have a design crew of 30 or 40 designers designing, for argument's sake, the 2024 car, which now in the week or two will be launched. But there's also another 30 or 40 guys that are designing the 2025 car and working out what rules have come in, which would be the first thing. And then also what the effects of the 2024 car have had, i.e. what good effects and what bad effects. And like what Bob alluded to earlier was the problem with the tyres. There isn't a design crew at Haas on the 2024 car that have been looking at the tyres. It's the guys that were finishing and designing the 2023 car that are going, what are we going to do to sort the 2024 car out that's eating the tyres up during the race? And that's going to be, the can's going to be kicked down the road there, because they don't have 40 people to look at that problem and simulate it and do tyre models and, all the various things that the other teams are doing and at. And that's why they have it nailed, is because Formula One's just so technical. It's difficult to explain because they won't let you inside to it. But that's the problems Haas and the smaller teams have, is to be able to move forward at the same time as race, which is really, really difficult.
That's brilliant stuff, Dave. All right, let's get a quick break in, just our last break of the show. Then we'll have a nice long segment after that. You're listening to your Sunday Night with Speed City, and that was former Haas F1 team manager Dave ONeal. Back right after this.
Hey, Jonathan.
Right, yeah.
What's the temperature where you are?
It's about 70, 75.
The entire United States, except for the coast, is just frigid right now.
It's summer here. That's the point. It's summer here.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, all the guys on YouTube, Jonathan, when you said you started doing football coaches about Saban, they all started saying Belichick and everything else. They forgot to mention the Cowboys coach, because he's probably going to be looking for a job after tonight.
Oh, ouch.
Don't laugh. Let's see.
Well, yeah, they were not ready to play, I guess.
Let's see what
It is that's a bad loss to a Green Bay side that can't be the side that was Aaron Rodgers' team.
Yeah.
Which is the team he came from to coach the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Yes. He should know what they're bringing.
Ouch. Mm-hmm.
You guys were talking, Dave, you mentioned Guenther's company, his carbon fiber company. We'll talk after the break.
Yeah.
I was kind of, like...
Hold on one sec, Dave.
Yeah, sorry.
Hello to everyone. This is Guenther Steiner. This is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
And it just is going to be so weird to have the Haas F1 team without Guenther. And you know, one thing I fear for the Haas F1 team is without Guenther and languishing at the back, they could just kind of disappear. You know, they're not going to get the kind of coverage they got with Guenther. I mean, do you think, guys think I'm crazy? It feels like they could just kind of go away.
Well,
I agree.
I think there's a certain amount of pressure, or there will be, from Liberty Media to the TV people to make sure everybody gets covered. Now, whether it won't be to the extent it was when everybody's favorite Guenther was out there, but they'll still get some coverage. But it's such a rocky situation. I mean, the psychologists will tell us that people work a lot harder when they admire the boss, the leader. And I'm wondering what the way Gene Haas has handled this, for good or ill, and the presence or absence of Guenther Steiner, or the success or failure of Io Komatsu as the new team principal, will affect the general quality of the work and the commitment to the project that you want from top to bottom in a Formula One team.
Good point. Well, Jonathan, you had some theories that you wanted to discuss.
Yes, I want to talk about the future of Guenther Steiner. I'm going to start with a public endorsement and directly to Guenther. Guenther, if you listen to this show, or if you do hear this show, I'd like to officially ask you to come and join Speed City. You are a great pundit. You are a great insider of Formula One. You are out of Formula One right now, and America needs you and wants you to be part of our show. We've already kidnapped your good friend, Dave ONeal, and he is chained to that desk you see him at. Come and join us, my friend, because I think you've got a lot to offer. And I'd hate to see you on Italian TV or German TV or any other. I'd like to see you with Speed City on Sirius XM and Odyssey.
All right,
Are you firing me?
You what?
Are you firing me?
No!
I'll give up my seat for
member
Guenther.
to the team.
It's like, well, so Guenther comes to Speed City F1, and now we got to hire a guy who's a specialist on the bleeper.
Yeah. Hey, not when we're on national radio. We don't have to worry about that.
I tell you what, though, I'm serious about that, but because I think it would be great, and I'm sure that Formula One will be thinking in those terms too. Adam Cooper mentioned this in a piece he did earlier this week, because he's huge value to Formula One. And let's not forget all those T-shirts at Vegas, all the autographs that we saw. You know, he and with the Concord agreement coming up, with Andretti coming into Formula One potentially. But I wanted to kind of my theories were I wanted to see what is open to Guenther. And I actually think the future is, my dad always says, behind one door shuts, the other one opens. And I think Guenther's doors are multiple.
Hold on, guys. In fact,
Casey,
do you have that clip of Guenther? We have a clip of Guenther, and this is one of the reasons why I think everybody loves Guenther, is because basically he says what you just said, Jonathan. And Casey, we got it. Let's hear this. This was an interview he did with Sky. Just a quick few seconds of it.
A good period in my life came to an end, but maybe an even better one starts.
And I know that's just a quick little clip, but when I heard that, it just makes me smile. And I'm see you smiling right now, Dave, because that's Guenther, right? I mean, I know he has his company to fall back on, but I feel like that's just the kind of upbeat personality that he is. And Jonathan, like you were saying, or no, Bob, you were saying about how when employees admire their boss and like their boss, I think Guenther was likable like that. So
sure. and put him and Chris Medlin together in the pit lane.
Oh, fantastic.
And, next thing you know, we'll be buying straw boaters and canes, and they'll be doing a soft shoe out there.
And I really do, and I'm dead serious. I think the combination of him and Medlin before on our pre-show would be fascinating. Add Dave ONeal to that, and yourself, Bob. We've got, we've got a great opportunity to give America a fantastic insight, and I'm hoping that might be even in a short interim. But I would like to discuss, what Guenther's got ahead of him, and that includes the potential of reuniting with Ford, Audi, Alpine, and more importantly, and I'd like Dave's take on this, Andretti. Surely Michael's going to say, that's the guy.
I'm not sure about those two. There was a little bit of
Yeah, Guenther was not a
banter.
fan. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, either or, they're not fans of each other. But what is next? He's got. I'm sure he's got lots of stuff to choose from. But behind the mic, people want to hear him for sure.
Sure.
And also gathering a team together. There are teams out there that need help.
Mm-hmm.
He's a heavyweight, isn't he? He's not finished.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of years of punditry before he joins Audi wouldn't be a bad thing. Or Ford.
Yeah. Or F1. The FIA need a little bit of help, don't they?
Certainly do.
Yeah, I think he's got
the FIA.
Now that would be fun.
He's got good contact with Ford. I saw Guenther was quoted saying, well, in fact, he was pictured with the second person to contact him after the announcement came out, and that was Eddie Irvine. And I've seen a picture of the two of them in their Jaguar gear. And Eddie was very warm to his, former team boss. One of his
John,
bosses.
Can I throw a left field one out there?
Absolutely.
What I would argue that if Guenther is, as we say, one of the most popular figures in Formula One and a 30-year insider as a team manager, who desperately needs popularity, an insider's work, and a return for the new investors? Alpine. Two very strong drivers, $250 million worth of boxers, golfers, American celebrities, including Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. They're going to want the face of Alpine to change. They're going to need
Imagine
somebody.
Ryan Reynolds and Guenther Steiner.
Right. So they need a strong figure like them to represent them and to represent Alpine. There's nothing wrong with the French and Renault and what they're doing, and there's nothing wrong with the two drivers, but they're not going to capture the worldwide audience the way they are right now. I don't mean that anybody needs to be fired, but if Guenther was looking for a place to fit in, I don't know how he'd work with the French and all that, but I do feel that Alpine needs some return on that investment of celebrities.
Yep. And imagine what the team meetings would be like between Guenther's accent and the French.
Yeah.
I mean, this would be World War II all over again.
Je suis wankels.
This is what must. We can have fun with it. There is a lot of team principal talent out there, it must be said. Guenther joins the ranks about Safnauer, Jos Capito, Mattia Binotto. And you probably all saw the picture on the internet of Guenther and Binotto buzzing around in a little Renault, not a Renault. They were in a Fiat 500.
Fiat 500, yeah.
At Binotto.
If you haven't seen it, look at it. It's good.
Yeah, very cool.
By the way, I went and saw the Ferrari movie on Friday night. That was really, really good. Really.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it was really.
Dave, where would you send him?
Well,
Send Guenther?
Yeah.
I think, he's out of everyone in the paddock that doesn't work for Ferrari. He knows more about Ferrari than everyone, I'd say. Even before Varsha turned up, I would have placed him there. There was, even before all this happened and before Binotto was out, though he was so close there. He was, he spent an awful lot of time there. And of course, he can speak 6 languages, so he would have fallen into that pretty quickly.
Can't understand any of them, but
But yeah,
He knows dirty words in 6 languages.
Yeah. FIA definitely need help. They're falling into disarray, I'd say. Ferrari, I don't know. I think the way some of the teams are going with the technical directors, like Williams, and then also Toro Rosso or AlphaTauri with Lauren Michaels, Williams, they're putting the strategists in charge into the team principals roles. So your Horners and your Totos, they don't really have too much to do with the way the race plays out. They just come in at the last minute to shut a driver up who's shouting and swearing. But the final decisions come down to the strategists and the engineers. So yeah, Renault sounds a good place that needs help, and maybe Ferrari needs help in the inside as well. But it's a bit of a strange one, really. With it's like the running a country, I guess, but not. You have all your different areas, but the engineering one seems to end up running the team, where there's so many different dimensions in the team to get right: the aero, the engine, the gearbox, the staff, the designers, to name a few. And behind the scenes, it seems to be the part that some of the teams are lacking to organise behind the scene, and the track is just the final part. You're only as prepared as you are when you leave the factory to go to the race. That's it, really. Your result's your result, unless you get a load of luck or rain. So,
yeah.
Dave, I heard Guenther talk about his favorite memories of being at the Haas team, and he said his favorite was in 2016 at testing at Barcelona. All the naysayers were there and saying it wouldn't work, and then they scored points in their first race. You were there, and you had a huge role, a huge part of that success. Do you have the same fond memories as Guenther, and do you have any other favorite memories of being at Haas?
Yeah, mine. I think we did the build in at Dallara, so we turned up there. The team was still getting built at that stage, so I had another crew of guys going to Barcelona to build the garage, because that was the first time the garage had actually been put up, which sounds kind of simple, but with all the wiring and the intercom system, the radio, the telemetry, and then having all the components speak to each other, the engine side, the chassis side, and then being able to speak back to base, and then using all the Ferrari equipment, they had to be able to speak back to their base as well. So that was pretty big. I think when we fired the car up at Dallara, that's probably the first kind of, wow, this is pretty cool. It's real. The thing cranked over, got oil pressure, cranked it over again, and we had the whole of Dallara in this tiny kind of room, maybe 1,000 square foot. We had one chassis with a second one on its way, and then pretty much everyone from Haas in there building the car, and then making the stores as well, because all the components that were getting built, we had to make all the part numbers for that. Didn't have QR codes at that point. So the parts were getting put together. So watching that thing fire up and rev the thing up to do the oil, check the oil level was pretty cool. That slammed the hairs back on the back of your neck up. Then we went to Barcelona, and I was telling John this earlier. I rang up Barcelona. I'm like, "Oh, you got any film days? Like to rent the track? Like, who are you?" I'm like, "I'm just Dave ONeal. I'd like to rent the track." And of course, they didn't know what was going on. Most of the people that were booking anything in. So I managed to get the day. I think it was the Saturday before the test started on the Tuesday, and the car did one lap and broke down.
Oh, no.
So we did the film day, and there was a couple of people with some iPhones and a few cameras, call it a film day. So we managed to get everything back to Dallara, fix whatever was broken. And we had a couple of days to get that together. And then when we went out, we were the first car out from memory. Testing started at 9 o'clock. And I told everyone we have to be the first one out. Got into the line, and the light went green, and that was the first time the car ran. So that, and then of course goes without saying, scoring points in Melbourne with Alonso's help was fantastic as well.
Dave,
Doing
that was brilliant.
pit stops.
That was so much fun to watch. Guys, we just looked at the clock. We are out of time. Dave ONeal, thank you. Bob Varsha, Jonathan, thanks, everybody. And we'll be back next Sunday night.